Besties, welcome back to my creator story, 10,000 Lives in One, Part 2, The Corporate Era. 10,000 Lives in One, Part 2, The Corporate Era. This is the story before the transformation, before creator. Before I was a creator, I was what many would call a corporate weapon, or like I like to say, your favorite ex-corporate girly. Vice president, MBA, CPA, board of directors, 5+ industries, from finance to consulting to banking to retail to boardrooms to audit executive energy. I've definitely lived 10,000 lives in one. And this part, most people only see the highlight reel, but let me take you behind it. And I've also linked my Substack. So if you're not subscribed and you want to read along, and in the show, I definitely add more because different things come to me. But if you want to see the drops early, I share different takes behind the scenes on Substack sooner than I share them on the show currently. The climb started early. So, in the last episode, I talked about some of my babysitting roles, different things that I did as a middle schooler or early teen. So, within corporate, I began as a teller in undergrad. While most people were figuring it out, I was already in the system, learning it, studying, executing it. This included within my first year and a half of being at the credit union, becoming best of the best and rookie of the year. So I started as a teller part-time. I was quickly promoted to full-time because even with full-time college at the time, my boss recognized that I was putting in close to full-time hours. Like I was doing 35, 38. So she asked me, well, why don't you go ahead and go full-time and get benefits? I'll give you a raise and I'll work around your schedule. So it was perfect. Then within less than a year, a financial rep role came up, and I submitted to be full-time and went to school at night because they definitely wanted me for initially at the main branch to be there during the day. And so I learned lending, I learned risk from the lending side, new accounts, all different things. And then later, I moved to a different branch where they let me go to school during the day. Charles and Marcia, I will forever be grateful to them. And based on the results, I, even with quote unquote working part time, 2.5 days a week, compared to, most people were working 5-6 days a week because we were open on Saturdays. My results were equaling as a full-time rep to equal to 3 full-time reps because of my cross-selling or upselling. So for example, people would come in for a brand new account. I would look at their credit and immediately start asking them about their car loan, about their mortgage, and upsell them. And that was not what they had originally come in for, but they were super excited and grateful because oftentimes I would slice their payments in half, consolidate their debt, refinance their mortgage, refinance their car, on and on and on. And so I negotiated with, getting those types of results of 3 full-time reps. I negotiated with the other branch, with Marcia and Charles, for the credit union to work around my college schedule and go to school at Sam Houston State University, where I shared some in the last episode where we started organizations like Millennium Models and different things that I got to do on campus, because I would be on campus typically by Monday night, and I would be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, leave late Thursday night, work all day Friday, usually party Friday nights, then work all day Saturday. And this was at a time when companies working around your college schedule was unheard of. But keep in mind, I had the results to back it up, and I sustained the results. That was my commitment going in, and I sustained it, and more than sustained it. So even working the 20-25 hours a week, I was still pulling in more than most pulled in with 40-50 hours a week. So years later, after Victoria's Secret didn't pan out like I thought, so a bit about that, and I'll definitely share that more in depth at an upcoming Substack an episode. So I ended up going to serve on NBC Apprentice. That's a whole nother leap of faith. And no, I did not meet our current president. And then I worked after grad school, immediately after grad school, actually, I worked at Victoria's Secret. That was a whole manifestation as well. That I walked in to, uh, it was, I believe, Memorial City Mall, or yeah, it was Memorial City Mall. It might have been a different mall, but anyway, I walked into Limited Brands. I asked if anyone regional or above was in the mall. Ended up talking to Teresa, manifested a director role. So after that didn't pan out, between being sold one thing, I'll give you the short version, that I would work at the store for 3 months and then go work at the corporate headquarters in New York. What ended up actually happening is, even with increasing sales over 10%, which was over $2 million in less than 6 months, and launching a brand new skincare line, Aura Science, and other accolades and results, including a CEO visits of the CEO at the time, Robin Burns, to my store. I was chosen for several reasons, and decreasing shrink from 49%, so that's theft for those of you that aren't in retail, to 26% within less than 6 months. So another million to 2 million in direct bottom line impact. When I confronted my then boss, Teresa, at the time about it, that, hey, you said I'd be here 3 months, I've been here 6 months, I've been more than patient. I put in the application, I haven't seen you back it up yet, etc. And I had a feeling what she was trying to do, and she was trying to keep me at the store. She's like, oh, I want you to stay here 2 years, because clearly I made her look good. And I was like, no, just listen to her, listen how she obviously didn't align up to integrity. And I called the credit union and I said, listen, and keep in mind, when I left, I gave a 3 week notice. This is why you don't burn your bridges. And, I called them and I said, I know when I left, you didn't have any supervisory or management or VP roles, because I wanted to put my MBA into practice. But do you now? And they were like, actually, we have a VP slot available, at the Katy branch that you were at previously. So it ended up aligning perfectly. Teresa was shocked when I gave my notice, and I was like, why are you shocked? Like, you promised me one thing, you completely backpedaled and reneged. And, I value myself. I know I'm worthy, and I'm giving you 2 weeks notice, but this is, you had every opportunity. And I asked you, like, are you sure this is your final quote unquote decision, what you're trying to do? So in any event, I came back as a VP, same building, different identity. So, speaking roles into existence, and that happened the same day. And it's interesting because oftentimes we forget what we've walked through, or the confidence or the creations that we've created when we're in our darkest days. So I was back at the credit union. I took a leap of faith with submitting to the NBC Apprentice. I was taking accounting classes at night, because when I came back to the credit union, I had all this time again. And I had the MBA, and I was like, okay, I want to either get the real estate license, which I may still get, or simply dive into real estate investments or REITs, or I want to get my CPA. And so I was taking my classes at night, and my mom and my dad were watching the show, and they were like, oh my God, we're watching Omarosa, and you'd be so amazing, la, la, la. And sometimes we take for granted that the people that are closest to us see something in us that we don't yet see in ourselves, or we've heard so many, like, great things at one point, so we don't fully receive it. And then I was in my accounting classes one night, and I was walking in, and some students that sat in the front, and I sat way in the back with like a group of almost what you would call like the UN. It was like me, different African American people, different Asian people, like literally like a coalition. And we would have different gatherings with like wine or hanging out or different things. Mary, Jeffrey, Audrey, like it was like we had so much fun. But anyway, these students that sat in the front that didn't even know me were like, Apprentice was on campus today, which I hadn't seen them because they were on during the day and it was an evening class. And we were thinking about you and talking about you, that you'd be amazing. And I was like, huh? Like I did a Scooby-Doo moment. I was like, And they said, and I said, well, what makes you say that? Like, I've never even talked to you. Like, I sit in the back, and they told me, well, your questions are amazing, and you always give great insight or great stories when the professor is asking. And keep in mind, you guys, this was a government funding class. Like, this was like our professor was awesome, but it was like one of the most boring, like content wise, subject wise classes I ever took. But it was, I'm so glad I took it because I met like several like amazing friends, including Sandeep, who's Indian, who I ended up being invited to her wedding in India and took my mom with me. And it was like literally a bucket list trip of a lifetime between Delhi, Agra, and Jaipur, the Golden Triangle, and her wedding in Chandigarh, which was 4 days, traditional Indian wedding, literally like the rich and famous, like amazing. So, in any event, they were, so when they told me that, I called my mom on my way home from campus from University of Houston at the time, and she told me like they're not going to be on campus again. She was like Googling while I was driving. She's like, but you can send in a videotape or a video of yourself and why you should be the next apprentice. So the next day, I recorded a 7-minute segment. Then they called me like, I think less than a week, 2 weeks later, told me, to record another video like live while they interviewed me on the phone. And then they called me, I think like a weekish later while I was at work. And I remember screaming, like, oh my God, NBC's on the phone. And they were like, well, do you want the good news or the bad news? And listen to what I said. This is 20-year-old me. Listen, I said, well, you're calling me. So to me, it's all good news. And they said, well, you're no longer being selected for the Apprentice TV show, but we want you to consult on the show for a minimum of 6 weeks. And it was, you guys, so the difference was is that I wasn't quote unquote on TV, but they filmed us the entire time. We were like the contestants before the contestants for season 4. It was an MBA on steroids. One of my favorite roles was being the project manager on a project with Sony and an upcoming artist and the makeup artist of Mariah Carey. Like amazing. The pressure, the speed, the visibility. And in 6 weeks, like what was done and the impact across so many projects we did was literally like more impactful and influential than an MBA. I could say that like 1,000% without hesitation. And so I learned I didn't want to just work in rooms, I wanted to lead them. And if you haven't listened to my video or my YouTube channel, you didn't know I had one maybe, it's Creator Bestie. I have an amazing video on there on how to stand out in a million people. Like I beat out 1.2 million people even with the first interview, and how I did it with NBC Apprentice. And also, if you go to my Substack, you'll find the episode on, or the article on 10,000 Lives in One, Part 2, and the video is embedded. So, more opportunities that I called in the trajectory of my corporate career. So, while I was finishing my CPA, so I was taking Becker CPA classes, I took Audit remotely, I took Regulations remotely, and I took finance. Finance I took in person because I knew like the book itself was like massive. And then I'm missing the fourth one, reg, audit, um, finance. Why am I? It's been a while. 4 parts, Becker, CPA. I'm Googling here, so you're getting this real time. Auditing attestation, FAR, reg. It was BEC at the time. Now they've changed it to ISC, Information Systems and Control. So I passed all 3 parts the first time. And what's interesting, I think I was overconfident with auditing because I was already doing audit and different audit projects like with the funeral home, and I literally missed it, you guys, by 2 points. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I appealed and they would not accept it, so I ended up having to retake it. But anyway, I was taking FAR in person because I, knew like this is the hardest part, it's the most information. I want to be in person. I want to immerse myself, at least once, twice a week. So while I was taking financials in person to study for the CPA at University of Houston, they had a career fair. And I manifested 4 offers on the spot and had the offers in hand within less than a week to 2 weeks, literally. So you might be wondering, Katrina, what 4 offers did you manifest? Dow Chemical, ConocoPhillips, CIA, and FBI. Yes, your girl could have done either and all of the 4, depending on how I stack them. So I remembered flying into Dow Chemical at Midland, Michigan, on the brink of a blizzard, hashtag paid. And at the same time, they had a location in Freeport, but their corporate headquarters was, and I believe still is, in Midland. And keep in mind, like, harsh winters, a small town, etc. And it was interesting because someone I knew, Donovan from college, actually was working there, and I was like, "What? Like, what's happening here?" So it was so super interesting when I saw him when I went for the interview. And the company was really nice. My boss would have been really nice, working with Donovan, working with the team. But ultimately, between the location and the weather, I decided no. This the CIA I interviewed with, and I remember receiving the call while I was in Ashland, Kentucky, and the requirements, the movability, the paid living, etc. At the same time, the comparison of the salary and the risk reward. So I declined them. I remember receiving the call in Ashland. Then FBI, I remember getting selected. And I still remember to this day sitting in the third part of the onboarding interview selection process. And when evaluating that, once again, in a sense, my freedom was not going to be my own, that I could not choose to stay in the same city where I was at the time, Houston, that I had to pick 3 others. Likely being an entry level special agent, I would get, the worst location or even one I didn't pick. And again, be required to move, succumb, submit, into other people's decisions and literally risk my life. Although, training, learning to shoot a gun, all the things definitely were exciting to me at the time. And so ultimately, I chose ConocoPhillips. I chose ConocoPhillips for more reasons than one because it felt like the right next level. And so I went through a 3-month intensive finance program that I loved, including presenting to the top executives of Conoco for a 2-hour straight presentation of everything I learned, and being super creative with like a board, graphics, visuals, videos, etc. And I met a really good friend of mine, Melly King, that later I coached her and trained with her, and we did a show together, NPC National Physique Committee. So talk about from business to bikinis, right? Then a year, and they relocated me to Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We flew during the training program back and forth on Conoco's private jet between Bartlesville and Houston. And then a year later, I was recruited at 1.5 times my salary for an oil and gas consulting role back in Houston, including reload, including bonuses, etc. And Conoco and my recruiter at the time, James, really fought to keep me. And, looking back, hindsight's 2020, right? But maybe I made the wrong decision, maybe the right one. But I decided to leave, and the company that recruited me, even though they sold me, everything but the kitchen sink up front, including that they were going to train me all these different things, but the reality is what was on day 3 of working there, barely any training on the Zytac software, etc. They flew me to work on Conagra, and apparently I discovered that they had sold me as one of their best consultants. So already, the taste in my mouth within less than a week was less than ideal. Was clearly, the salesperson had clearly lied to the client. I was literally learning on the job. And then, my trainer slash boss, she worked from like 8 a.m. to like 11 p.m. And keep in mind, I'm still studying for the CPA at the time and working out and other things, and never ever said I would be married to this job. But that was her expectation. And it was clear like the resentment was there. So Interestingly enough, we mutually parted ways about 3 to 6 months later. It was the polar opposite, as you can hear and see in my voice. The terms of integrity, honesty, onboarding, and support, and we mutually parted ways. And then came the jump. So 17 recruiters later. Yes, 17. And side note, you guys, you can follow me on LinkedIn. It's Katrina Julia as well, where you can see this highlights as well as different recommendations that I've received from so many people all around the world. So 17 recruiters later, which obviously that's a lot of stories, including that several of them kept trying to recruit me as a recruiter because they're like, oh my God, you'd be amazing at sales, etc. I'm like, we always all sell, but I don't want to sell or play matchmaker between companies and a role and a person. So I ended up accepting an accounting support training manager role with two amazing recruiters, Mark and Stacy, which were still connected on LinkedIn and Facebook. And they showed me in every way they truly cared, both about me and about the client. Like they were listening to everyone. And that's such a rare thing in today's day and age. And even then, so the company was servicing Exxon, Chevron, Conoco, and I helped take the company public. I generated with a team of 4 and then indirectly about 100 people, 8-figure results in year 1. Let that sink in year 1. So literally over 10 times the return on investment from me, like that they received. This included negotiating a 15,000 salary increase within 6 months once I officially received my CPA. So also let that sink in. So I was already thinking ahead of what added value I'm bringing in and preempting it from the start. Because also what happened, interesting enough, is I had already negotiated at the time 80K, but then literally like Hail Mary at the last minute, they had hired a VP of HR that tried to come in and backpedal the offer by 15,000. I was like, yeah, no, bro, that's not gonna work. And of course, the recruiter was like apologetic and also, was like one of the first time, I think it was the first time he had ever experienced something like that, but he had experienced people like backpedaling or doing, shady stuff. And I said, I understand you're, a new VP of HR, et cetera, la, la, la. And him and I really never got along. Like there's a lot of shady stuff he did. And I learned how to work around him like exponentially. I think he ended up getting fired later, like not surprisingly. But anyway, I said, you know what? I said, to move this along, and I really do want to start working again. I'm finishing up my CPA. Like I had literally finished taking the last part of the CPA. I think October 26th, and then I started like October 29th. I distinctly remember. And then part of the CPA requirement was you had to quote unquote sit or work under a CPA for a certain amount of time. And I had already done part of that at Conoco, but I still had 5 or 6 months. So I said, you know what, I'll accept this offer, but when I receive my CPA in April, then aligned with that, proving that I have the license I want in the offer letter. So it ended up being within 4 months that I'm bumped up to 80K. And then on top of that, I spoke into existence amplified abundance with one conversation of transitioning consultants that were costing the company millions of dollars. I spoke into existence a $10,000 bonus for each myself and the entire team internally that was doing the what we called franchise rollouts of standardization of Six Sigma, etc. And that started to give me even more confidence to speak into existence 100K, million K. So I haven't received that yet as a bonus, but that is something I have, or as a receipt in a day or in an hour or in a conversation. However, I have started practicing that exponentially with EFT, with prayers. If you don't know what EFT is, it's emotional freedom technique. I have episodes about that, EFT versus EMDR, and then also blog posts at fitlifecreation.com/blog. So I was at the oil and gas company for about 2-ish years or more at the time, helped them with training rollouts, taking the company public, etc. and I applied for a project management officer role at the parent company. I ended up not getting it, and I think part of it was also that it was requiring a lot of travel back and forth to Saudi. And if you know anything with Saudi and women and leadership, likely there you have it. However, that was never directly said, but then I indirectly thought that likely played a factor because I already had so many results to back me. But I really liked the person as a friend that they picked for the role, Brian Seimer. He was awesome. We really got along well because we ended up working together on several things. So months later, without me applying, let that sink in too. I had proven results. I had a trajectory. I had already let it be known with the parent company that I was more than open to moving and living in Atlanta. Months later, Jay, the CFO at the time, emailed me, one line email, hey, we're sourcing for a CFO. Would you like to throw your hat in? I was like, yes, absolutely. Thank you for thinking of me. That was it. I didn't have to submit a resume. I didn't have to submit a proposal. I didn't have to submit a cover letter. Nothing. Nothing. And keep in mind, when I went in for the project management officer role, I came in with a presentation on how I would run the role for the first 3 months to a year. So they already knew that I was already future forecasting. At the same time, I knew that there was already like massive companies in Atlanta, massive talent to choose from on countless chief audit executives. And so the mantra became, if it's for me, it's for me. And I released the outcome. I detached. I kept focusing on what I was doing with, the subsidiary. I ended up getting a call in between while they were still interviewing other people, and I knew that hey, we're still sourcing, but you're still on our short list. We'll keep you posted from Juanita, the VP of HR at the parent company, Aquilix at the time. And I was like, thank you for letting me know, etc. A couple of weeks later, I get another call that, we would love to offer you the offer. That you stood out from all the chief audit execs that we interviewed from an aspect of personality, of culture, of already proven results, of already having the horsepower, so to speak, and also that you have this nature, and these were Juanita's words, that the world is in my hands. So relocation, uh, it was over 20% increase. Relocation paid for by the company and delivered an 8-figure impact in under a year again. And this time it was across multiple entities. It was the parent and it was 3 subsidiaries, turning risk into revenue, waste into efficiency, chaos into clarity. So I found millions in fraud, waste, and abuse. And then I also found millions in revenue opportunities on new revenue and then also on missed revenue. Like the contracts were a mess. In the middle of, I think it was 6 months in, I had put together a recommendation for a VP of contracts, and then they were offering me the position. They're like, you already know what to do. You would be amazing at this. I'm like, I don't want to move back to Houston. I'm like, thank you. I'm flattered, but I don't want to move back to Houston. I want to stay in Atlanta. And the main contracting issues are in the Houston subsidiary. So, in any event, so was there over a year and a half. And after 3 answers to prayer, I gave my notice. It was a role with a tech company remotely. So I was doing side hustles before side hustles were even a thing. Uh, I was offered and was working on a business plan with geoponics and different things in Arizona. And then I was offered and accepted being an adjunct professor for accounting at Georgia State University. So when I gave my notice, the CEO said, I thought you were my next COO. And I took a deep breath and leaned back and I said, then I didn't do a good job sharing who I truly am or what my passion and purpose is. And I realized I had built a life that looked incredible on the outside or on paper, but it wasn't aligned to purpose. So, what corporate actually gave me, and more came after this from my consulting company with inclusivity, with elite change, with helping, with forming that with two of my best friends, Janelle and Angela, Dallas and Rick, and that's still in existence. I stepped away as CFO, then forming inclusivity, working with the American Institute of CPAs, and publishing and traveling all around the United States. Fun fact, I also got to travel to Netherlands on a fraud case. And then starting up and building Fit Life Creation and create it from the ground up. And so what corporate actually gave me, it didn't limit me. I am a firm believer, like nothing is ever wasted. It's used, it's built upon, it makes momentum. It trained me, it aligned, it helped me with discipline, with momentum, with mindset, with dashboards, return on investment, negotiation, structure, presentation, risk, resilience. Everything I use now, so much of it was founded as a child, listening back to episode 1, the previous episode on this series, then cultivated in college with so much of what I curated and created, and then manifested into momentum as I shifted from corporate into calling to creator. But something was missing. On the tail end of those years, in the midst of the transition, I strengthened my faith massively from fear to faith, self hate to love, corporate to calling, lost 55 plus pounds. I'll talk more about that in the next episode with transformation. I was creating my consulting company, teaching with AICPA, which I also manifested with one email. I'll talk about that more. And started to see clearly success without alignment, without fulfillment of purpose, is incomplete. Nothing was wasted, not the boardrooms, not the burnout. There was a massive burnout during those times of me working at the subsidiary and then transitioning into the parent company. And in between that was when I went to India for the wedding, for my friend's wedding, Sandeep, that I mentioned earlier. But nothing was wasted, not the ambition, not the burnout, not the boardrooms. Every single piece, hear me, was preparation. Because I wasn't meant to simply scale companies. I was meant to create something new. That was a common thread that kept repeating. Now, part 3 in the episode that's coming up with Transformation Era is where everything transforms, literally faith, identity, body, from the inside out. The version of me that you see now, that you hear now, was birthed out of this chapter. So, what part of your journey looked successful on paper, but didn't fully speak to your soul? If you're in that in between right now, just know nothing is wasted. And your next level will require you to finally tell the truth about who you really are. And if you love this, definitely check out my Substack and the options to subscribe, and or take a peek at my creator school through any of the Fit Life Creation freebies like Creator to Cash that you can find at my link in bio at Katrina Julia Fit on Instagram. As always, create, transform, and inspire because you are born to.